Hey everyone, very good evening to you. Charles here with FRGNT Daily Chart Analysis. Sunday the 9th of November 2025 already, and we are pre-London Open for week 46, if I'm not mistaken. So first pair that I'd like to go through is EG, just sharing my thoughts, analysis, mindset on this pair, aligning with structure and how I read the chart on a daily basis. So we'll start with that weekly time frame as always. Let's enlarge the screen for what it's worth. Now what we can see from the weekly time frame is that price on that weekly candle close rejected those previous weekly highs beautifully from that weekly higher time frame order block in the bottom right hand corner. We took a beautiful trade short on EG, I think on Friday, closing the week out nicely, but the here and now, we've got our previous weekly highs and lows marked on and some wick imbalances just so we can build that confluence across the chart. What we can see in terms of our highest probable setup, in my opinion, would be the long position from and around. If you look and bring your attention to that center chart, that daily chart, around that daily 50 EMA, from what we can see, price is respecting it beautifully. So with that said, we can expect once price comes back down to that daily 50 EMA in and around that area, that's going to pair up nicely with that wick imbalance that we can see in and around these areas just here for a long continuation, in line with, to bring your attention with the left hand side chart now, the 4-hour time frame, which as you can see is just giving higher highs in terms of basic structure, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. If this is to come back down here, that would be a very standard double bottom before looking for that continuation on the 4-hour time frame. So with that said, I'm aware that my highest probable trade will come in terms of the long position from this long area just in this region. However, with that said, in terms of the here and now, let's focus on where price is and would I be looking to get in any positions in the immediacy in terms of the London session or New York session come Monday morning and afternoon. Well, what we can see again, if you do draw your attention to the left hand side chart, that 4-hour time frame, as we just said, basic structure, higher high, higher low. After the higher high, again, a high degree of chance percentage that price will come down in for that higher low before making potentially a higher high. However, what must be said is we are in a higher time frame order block. We are in a weekly order block. So how comfortable are you as a trader in terms of trading into a higher time frame order block? It's not to say that can't happen, but what must be said is you would definitely have to manage that trade with aggression. As you can see here, we do have 50 pips up towards the upside before we look to find a potential short in line with the higher time frame, in line with the daily time frames, and that weekly candle that is looking incredibly bullish. So it's quite a technical position, e.g. it's one that you would definitely have to look to manage the position once you're in it, in terms of bringing your position to break even. But nevertheless, I do see that there are opportunities. In terms of the shorts from the previous weekly high region, again, that's going to align nicely in terms of that higher time frame confluence on that weekly order block and a retest of these areas of which we took our short position on Friday. So how would that look? Well, as you can see here in the immediacy, price is looking very bearish, and we'll just be looking for price to come back into an area of imbalance left there at the top, which we have. Excuse the noise, as always, Central Milan, it can get fairly noisy. What we do have at these ultimate highs again is a 4-hour order block that we will put on in and around this region here. Excuse me. Now, depending on what area is hit first, that will obviously play a big part in the position that I would take after. So, however, if price is to come up into this area, again, like always, it would be taken after a degree of confirmation, as I've already illustrated in and around these highs. I'll be looking for some breaks of structure, particularly on the 5-minute time frame. And if price is going to snap on that 15-minute time frame, I'll be looking for it to come right back up into that area. Give me that lower time frame confirmation or potentially a break of 15-minute intraday structure as well to get that confluence that price is ready for another rollover. So with that said, that is certainly an opportunity that I'll be looking to take. In terms of the long position from the lows, again, if it makes sense, I use the facts that are presented to me. We have an order block, a 4-hour order block left in and around these areas, at the area that most recently caused that higher high. So again, in terms of basic price action structure, higher high, looking for that higher low before a potential higher high to be created on that 4-hour time frame. Also, that aligns nice with that previous weekly low, as well as a key structure point based on, well, if this is broken, then I will consider that 4-hour structure null and void potentially in terms of taking any further long positions until price does get down to this 4-hour EMA area. So those are the positions I'll be looking for in terms of EG going into Monday, week 46. While I am here, let's take another look also at GU, a pair that is also shaping up nicely as we look to go into the week. So again, as always, bottom right hand corner, that will be the weekly time frame. Again, as I always do, just isolate some key areas on there in terms of our highest probable setups and other opportunities that we would be willing to get into once we do have that confirmation. So up at the highs, as we can see, we've got that daily 50 MA. I do perceive that to be one of the highest probable setups that we could take in terms of a short, in line with that most recent price action that's looking incredibly bearish at this time on the weekly time frame. However, what must be said is if you draw your attention to that daily opportunity, that daily time frame, you can see a lot clearer how we do have some areas of interest which short positions could well be taken from. We have that weekly 50 MA potential rejection. The only drawback from this is that as we are approaching the start of the week, I don't expect that weekly time frame to start rejecting just yet. In terms of a weekly candle on this, I do expect a push up into that daily 50 MA. And as that continues to push, we can then expect, once we find that resistance and short from that daily 50 MA, the weekly candle closure will be something like this to then respect that weekly 50 MA, as you can see has happened previously with price closing bearish above it. We expect that come Friday of next week, we will have exactly the same in terms of a rejection from that weekly 50 MA, leaving a wick at the highs, of which we have caught the short from our highest probable setup. So again, that's my highest probable setup on GBPUSD, waiting for price to come up to these highs, that daily 50 MA. We've isolated the daily order block and refined that nicely with a 4-hour order block in and around that region. That also aligns nicely with that wick imbalance, as we can see just here, that is still to be filled, that wick on the weekly time frame. But again, in terms of the here and now, as I always look to go down into the fact we are intraday traders. So we've got that weekly 50 MA. We can't discount that. We can't discount that we are approaching a 4-hour order block that we can see on GU just now. However, the only drawback with that is that price has recently closed above that 4-hour 50 EMA. So if any positions are to be taken from this region, again, management skills are going to be of the highest grade, since we can expect price to just come down into that weak 4-hour 50 EMA before finding a rejection to potentially push price back up to that daily 50 EMA for a higher probable setup in the short. So nevertheless, it's an opportunity, but again, what would I need to see from that area? Much of what I disclosed earlier, I'll need to see some significant areas, at least on the 15-minute time frame, to be broken. Even just eyeballing, having a look at price just now as it is, we can isolate this area here and just briefly call it a structure point. We can clone that area also. And in terms of a patient trader, would look for that to be broken. However, since we know that our targets are going to, or management is going to be around that 4-hour 50 EMA area, it would be nice if we could see, first of all, a 4-hour candle close. To draw your attention to the bottom left-hand chart, 4-hour candle closure from that area below that 4-hour 50 EMA. That would then give us the confidence that, okay, we could potentially now start rolling short towards these lows on that daily time frame, where we do have a daily order block there, supported by the previous wick low as well, as you can see in that bottom right hand corner chart. So if we do get that 4-hour candle close, then perfectly we would wait for a wick that would be created in and around this 4-hour candle closure. We would see a lovely bearish trend on that 4-hour, or at least some bearish price action on that 15-minute time frame. And then, like always, we'll be waiting for this wick to be filled. Once that wick has then been filled, I'll draw the illustration of which that will look for you. For a 4-hour candle close, that'll be a beautiful trend down, or beautiful price action down. We'll then retest that wick all the way up here that was caused, and then we at least would have an area to aim for. We'll be then trending on the correct side of that 4-hour EMA, as opposing to trending in to the 4-hour EMA and anticipating the rejection. It'd be quite the opposite, since price is now closed below that 4-hour 50 EMA, as it's a more dynamic EMA in contrast to the daily and the weekly. Then that will make absolute sense to then take sales from this area. So that would be my mindset going into GU, waiting for that 4-hour candle close, to be quite honest, before looking for shorts. In terms of the 1 hour, I don't think it would be enough for me. I know that my higher probable setup is going to come from a short from this area in terms of a long position as well. Then down at these lows in the daily chart, bring your attention to the central middle chart. You can see we've got, due to that cause of price action, they're rocketing off on that'll be Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, leaving that daily order block behind. Once price does get in and around that area, then I can see some rejection coming in. No order blocks there at the moment on the 4-hour time frame, so we'll have to start building confluence when price gets into that area before looking to go long, simply because we do have an area of high interest. If I bring your attention to the weekly time frame, that's how the weekly's looking. So the here and now, these are areas in which we would be looking to take positions from, but again, we cannot discredit the fact that price has every opportunity to come to these lows before then finding reaction to bring it up higher towards that daily 50 EMA, excuse me. So that's the mindset going into these positions. As always, waiting for confirmation before the trades are taken. That way we are not drawn into taking positions prematurely, risking our capital again prematurely. But nevertheless, we do have the range between this immediate area here and these daily order block lows, 151 pips. That's more than enough for us to get a 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, etc., etc. And then from the absolute lows on that daily time frame, from that daily order block up to that daily 50 EMA, which would be looking for a higher probable sales, 330 pips. So you do not have to be the first person to get in these longs from those lows, and you most certainly don't have to be the first person to short coming down from that daily 50 EMA as well. So patience will always pay. I do foresee there to be beautiful opportunities coming in on GU. So there's a little breakdown for EG and GU. Whilst we're there, we'll take a look at the DXY since it's marked up. Have a little look how it's performing. In terms of the DXY, as forecast, we expected a rejection coming from that rejection of the weekly 50 MA. We've had that paired up with the fact we were in a previously mitigated weekly order block. That price, of course, as you can see, rejected it beautifully. We've now marked on our previous wick highs and our previous wick lows, and to be quite honest, it's difficult to forecast anything in terms of the DXY, but what we can see is that when price does get into an area where we would expect the DXY to be shorting from, that would be where we can look for potential long positions on GU, for example. So as the dollar gets weak, we can expect GU to start going or moving bullish. So with that said, just bringing our attention back to GU, if the DXY starts falling and GU starts strengthening, it's more than likely that this middle trade here, or this 4-hour order block, will probably be smashed straight through, bringing us to all the way up to that daily 50 MA. Then when the DXY starts its turnover, then of course then we can look for our ultimate shorts there from that 4-hour 50 MA. So it's just to be mindful of all eventualities. If the DXY is moving, then it will of course have a nice play on our other pairs. It will just give us that guide on when to enter and when not to enter. So that's the DXY. We've got a tremendous range from these positions that we've highlighted there on the weekly time frame. So again, getting into any positions in a hurry, it'd be very mindful just to have a look at that DXY. How is the DXY performing? Am I entering perhaps GU a little bit prematurely? However, with that said, if price action aligns and we get the entry criteria, I'm not going to be fighting against my edge. I'll just have to let it play out unless it's very clear that the DXY is going to be doing something in the opposite direction that will pull my trade into its stop loss. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that gives you a good gauge of my mindset going into Monday. That's GU, EG, and a little breakdown on the DXY. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Charles of FRGNT Daily Chart Analysis. All the very best.